Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Pivotcast today. I wanted to play with the concept, what is reality? Now, this is something that we think we experience every single day, and we think it's the same for everybody around us. And yet, we all have our different versions of reality that we go through. And I wrote this paper 2 years ago for a course during my MBA. The course was Foundations of Management Thought. And we talk a lot about these opposing concepts, right? Being able to hold and be at the pivot point, if you will, two opposing concepts such as seriousness and play. And when we were diving into this, we learned all about the great, minds, philosophical minds, and the Stoicism and different ways of how we experience and interact with our world, the different eras, and how that's applied to foundational schools of thought. Now, yes, this was in the context of management, but really, what is management? Management is about helping to get things moving forward, right? Taking action, inspiring people to do things so that, hey, it fits your reality, right? So, what exactly is reality? What is it to you? Can you define it? Can you make it really visceral? The reality you experience day to day, is it the same? Is it the same as it was last year? Is it different to mine? And how would you know if it's different or the same? Or are you making assumptions about what reality is and the realities of those around you? You may have chosen differently. You may have grown or evolved. Perhaps you moved. You had a major pivot. And yet, we don't need a major pivot to experience different realities. We can experience them in our day to day life as we pivot through roles that we play, as we pivot through the different times of day, our different energy levels. And so this really came to me this morning as I was doing one of my practices that all highly successful people do, which is slow down, tune in. And it came to me to share this with you because as a mindset, life, and accountability coach, I help people to redefine what success is. And very often that boils down to, what reality are they living in right now? What's the stories they're holding themselves to or making up? And what is the reality that they want to live in? Can they articulate that? From there, we can establish the gap and we map out that path together. So we can then take action and actually create a reality. That's what all of this stuff means. There's all this lingo on the internet these days about manifestation and, aligned action, inspired action taking. At the end of the day, it's about understanding the reality that you're living now and the reality where you want to be so that you can do something about it. If you can't articulate that to yourself, then you're going to wake up every single day and you're going to feel like, well, my life's pretty good. I've got the house and the car and the things and the stuff, and, I'm getting paid pretty well at work and my job's not too difficult. So what's there to complain about? But you're missing the point. We're not supposed to have something to complain about. We're supposed to live life out loud and full of color, vibrant. We're supposed to experience this philosophical and playfulness. We're supposed to experience the magical, yet understand science and have logic to keep order so that the chaos doesn't reign in, so that we can master the forces inside of us and create a reality that we actually want to live in. Living your life by design instead of default. Conscious and intentional response versus reaction. Now, for some people, my previous role, my whole role was revolving around reaction. I lived in the fast-paced network and world of the VVIPs flying private jets. The reason they have them is to change their minds whenever they want and fly to wherever they want. Like that. They got to move the world, right? Make decisions, make business happen. So being in a state of reaction served me. It was dynamic. It allowed me to master the art of change and to be able to handle those situations with ease. And practice makes progress, right? And so that's why sometimes I appear so put together, like I know exactly what I'm doing. But I'm just like all of you, having this human experience, showing up, figuring it out as I go along, using others' lessons to help guide me, but ultimately having my own lessons and creating the life that I want to live rather than the life somebody told me I should want to live. And so, as we go through this, success seekers, you guys are a different breed. You are insatiably curious. You love to learn. You love to develop. You love to grow, climb new heights, scale new mountains. You like to move fast, uber fast, right? When you blink, other people are already like a mile behind you. You're like, where is everybody? They can't even see where you went because there's so much dust, right? And so you don't get it. And it's frustrating. And other people don't get that you're wanting to move fast. And why don't you want to slow down? So they pull back, they fight you. And it's frustrating, it's exhausting. So you learn to shut down the muchness, right? And you try to live in their reality because, hey, you're getting rewarded for it, right? Whether that's love or gold stars at school or the straight A's, the promotion at work, the industry award, right? You get dopamine every time you live in their reality and they validate it because you're making their reality wonderful. But what about your reality? What is your truth? And what's the worldview that you have? That's what I want to know. So, very often, success seekers, they get shut down for their muchness, so they start to play small and they hide and they try to play by the rules, but they couldn't fit in a box if they tried. And maybe for a period of time, but eventually they pop out and it might cause some damage because they've been in there like a caged dragon just waiting to spread its wings. So even when that door is opened by a loving caretaker, fire is breathed down on them. So we lash out, right? Success seekers, you guys know what I'm talking about. You overcompensate, and we seek extremism to release the pressure off of that cooker. So today, we're going to be playing with this concept, what is reality? Because this is something that when we can start to understand this from different viewpoints, different levels, then we can start to move from extremism to ease, and we can define our own rules and redefine what that success looks and feels like, and reestablish how we relate to this and other concepts. So, this paper that I wrote in 2020, the only directive, it was our final paper for the course. It was my final course of my entire MBA, which for me was a longer journey as I did it part time while working. And his only directive was make me think. And so I asked, how much liberty do I have with this paper? And he said, you do whatever you want. If you use an idea from someone, you cite it, but I don't want to know what other people talk about. I want to know what you think, and I want you to challenge me. So you can imagine, I rose to the occasion. I said, yes, this is fun. This is exciting. Let's play with the concept of what is reality. And so I challenged my own mind in that process. And it was interesting and fascinating and a little bit frightening, not going to lie. There were some things in there that I was like, whoa, what if? What is reality? Right? And it got me thinking, got me questioning. And I love people who question things because that's how we learn about this world, this experience around us. And so this is an invitation. As I read this paper, feel free to turn away from the computer screen, just listen to the words, because as you look at a screen and you take in visual stimulation, you're receiving something ridiculous like 1,000,000,000,000 photons per second. So give yourself a stimulation rest. Give yourself some visual silence. So this is an invitation to close your eyes and question, what is reality? Speaking of, when your eyes are closed, are you experiencing reality, or is reality experiencing you? There's food for thought. So get settled, close your eyes, or if you want to stare at me as I read my paper to you, go right ahead. I can't see you, I can't control you. All right, now, as we do this, I want you to really tune in. What is the reality that you're experiencing, and where is the reality that you'd rather be? Sit with this and play with it after this live as well, and come back if you need some stimulation, some philosophical musings on this Monday afternoon. I give you full permission to play with this concept, to allow yourself to sit with it, to come back to it, revisit it. It's a dynamic, living, breathing thing. It's not one size fits all, and it's certainly not static. Our reality changes with each breath, with each moment, with each pivot point. And so you might not expect what comes up, but be kind and curious at the same time. Don't judge whatever comes up. Simply act as if you're 5 years old, experiencing something for the very first time. And give yourself that wonder and that awe again. So I want to share this paper with you. What is reality? What is reality? The Cambridge definition defines it as the state of things as they are, rather than as they are imagined to be. A definition that most people take for granted and never think twice about. But who then determines the definition of the state of things as they are? Who has the authority to conclude what is real and what is not? Does reality come from my sensory experience, or does it come from my mind? Ask a scientist and then a philosopher, or a man and then a woman, and you will get very different answers, I guarantee you. And therein lies the conundrum, for reality is in fact a subjective experience. Descartes famously said, "I think, therefore I am." And this can be interpreted to mean that because one has thoughts, one is real and thus living in reality. Meditators often talk about the gap, or state of nothingness that you can fall into. With practice, the thoughts that used to flood their minds slowly drift away during meditation. Taking Descartes literally, this should mean that they cease to exist because they are no longer thinking. However, to the observer, their bodies are still physically present, and one would still be able to see and touch them. So whose reality is real? This concept of body versus mind is central to the belief of dualism. Descartes says each interact and could affect the other, but are two distinct realities. Clear as mud, right? He did not completely discount the fact that we have senses, but he did not trust them as the mind can be fooled quite easily. I can touch my face, feel my features, and see my reflection in a mirror. By what means can I know with certainty that what I see is the state of things as they are? An individual with an eating disorder will see a reflection that is grotesque and obese, even when they are malnourished and barely a skeleton with tightly stretched skin over their bones. Their gaunt eyes perceive a different version of reality staring back at them than medical professionals and friends. When one is sick and cannot smell properly, she also loses her sense of taste, as the two are closely linked. Does the fudgy brownie in reality taste less desirable, or are the senses faulty in that moment? The sick person's reality does not match their healthy reality. It could also differ to another's experience who says chocolate is disgusting, who's clearly a person out of touch with reality. Another thought that demands attention is that there are things that cannot be sensed, such as electrons and photons, that are in fact very real. Science has proven their existence, but my senses cannot detect them, so I can argue that they do not exist. Time exists, albeit in a very different way than we understand, an argument for another paper. However, it is experienced differently by each person. Ask anyone who has had to hold a handstand for 60 seconds if they thought a minute was long against anyone in the throes of passion, and you will have two very different versions of what time felt like in that moment. Did their senses deceive them, or were they simply perceived differently based on the action? So which version of time is real? For many people, reality is a combination of their sensory experiences, thoughts, and expectations. Reality then becomes the idea that when one wakes up in the morning, he expects to be in his bed, or at least a bed. This is a reliable assumption based on lifelong experience. The sun rises and then it sets. You go to work and you get a paycheck. You stub your pinky toe and scream out profanities because, hey, it fucking hurts. The sensory experience of waking in bed reaffirms the expectations a person had. She can feel the pillow under her head and the duvet wrapped around her body. The thought process of someone waking up is something to dive deeper into. For when we are asleep, we dream. What is a dream? Scientists and philosophers have debated this for centuries, and Wikipedia tells us that dreams are a succession of images, ideas, emotions, and sensations that are usually occur involuntarily in the mind during certain stages of sleep. Fascinating. Sensations occurring in the mind? As a vivid dreamer, these sensations certainly feel as real as one's experienced in a waking state. So, am I awake or dreaming right now in this very moment? How do I know that the sensation of my fingers tapping away on the keyboard are accurately depicting to my mind things as they actually are? Perhaps I will come to find myself opening my eyes in bed, having only dreamt of writing, and then I have to reconcile the experience as a sensation of my mind that I cannot trust. Let's sit on this for a moment. Science and philosophy both seek knowledge but are often at odds with each other. An oversimplification is scientists seek the how using empirical testing, and philosophers seek the why. Science has the ability to give concrete answers, we believe, while philosophy leads to more questions than anything else. And then you have quantum mechanics and physics, which is a whole different ballgame. And people like John Archibald Wheeler, labeled a scientist philosopher, propose that observers create reality, saying no phenomenon is a real phenomenon unless it is an observed phenomenon. Say that 5 times fast. His questions and life work led to many experiments, later proving that light behaves differently when observed or not observed. Wait a second. Haven't we just theorized that reality is in the eye of the beholder? Now John comes along and tells us that reality is in fact altered by the observer. Are these two separate and distinct realities, individual perceiver and observer? Or is the interaction between the two, in fact, reality? What an interesting thought, the interaction between the two being reality. Each may have their own perception of reality as they experience it, but it is in fact the interaction that creates the reality for all involved and for those watching, you voyeurs, you. The Western world often takes the viewpoint of the individual, seeing things as separate. This is your experience and this is mine. Where the Eastern view takes the viewpoint of the collective. We are all connected, and what you experience, I experience. Both are reality. Physically, I am separate from you. There is negative space between your body and mine. But I can feel your experience if I allow myself to, through empathy or energetic connection. Particularly if people have a close bond, they often report back a knowing of when their significant other, twin, sibling, parent, friend is going through some extreme emotion or experience. How can this be if one is sitting on their couch at home when they are suddenly overcome with intense pain or emotion that has nothing to do with their current physical experience? Whose reality is he experiencing, his own or another's? And in reality, whatever that means, he is experiencing both. So the view here is that reality is defined by the interaction and not solely by an individual experience. Another way to ponder this is to consider the ocean. The ocean, at first glance, is homogeneous and one whole body of water. And yet we know we can be sprayed with individual droplets of water while sailing. Has that droplet of water ceased to be a part of the ocean in that moment? Reality changes from one moment to the next, as it goes from homogeneous body of water to water droplet and absorbs back into the sea. Let's return to the dreaming state dilemma and fall down that rabbit hole. I believe I am dreaming at this moment from another reality, and in this reality, I am awake. Which is real? Both are. Can I prove my experience to you, the observer? Does your observation of me dictate which reality I am in? You perceive me to be awake, so I am not dreaming. We are in the same reality. Does this change if I have taken a substance that alters my perception of reality? Your observation of me could possibly stay the same. That is, you observe me to be awake. Yet, I am now dreaming, in what you perceive to be an awake state. But I am no longer seeing what I or you expect to see in a waking state. Now, instead of you as human in front of me and a blue sky, I see a blue caterpillar and a pink sky. He is smoking a pipe, no less. So who is experiencing the real reality? You or me in my awake, dreaming self? Perhaps the substance I've just taken has pulled back a veil that has obstructed my view of the true reality, and I can see clearly for the first time. You are, in fact, a blue caterpillar smoking and asking me who I am, and not the dream human version my brain sensed as real. If I verbalize this to you, your perception of me will change. Your senses will tell you that I am not in your reality. How do we reconcile this? Will taking the same substance impart my reality to you and then we are in the same one? Or will your reality be different? And then which is true? I suppose a lot of experimentation is required for empirical evidence gathering and subsequent philosophical discussions. Let's take a bit of a less extreme example, if you can call it that. A person is in love is often said to have rose colored glasses on as they look at life. Everything is joyous and amazing, and nothing can ever be wrong with the other person, with the one that they love. Minor grievances go unnoticed. To be in love, a state everyone wishes for. Humans do many things to achieve this state because we know we get a better version of reality when we do. Scientifically, it is proven that being in love creates chemical reactions, stimulating the same parts in the brain as if you've taken a drug. Euphoric feelings, connection, a sense of purpose, and a meaning to life are all things love and drugs have to offer. But how many times have those feelings hidden the real reality? When the rush wears off and she still works 80 hours a week with no real time for you, or you can no longer fly and talk to animals, your perception of reality filters back to the assumed and expected state of the Cambridge definition of reality that we all accept on a day-to-day basis. In Plato's Republic, published in 380 BC, he said, "And those whose hearts are fixed on reality deserve the title of philosophers. When the mind's eye rests on objects illuminated by truth and reality, it understands and comprehends them and functions intelligently. But when it is turned to the twilight world of change and decay, it can only form opinions. Its vision is confused and its beliefs shifting." The reality is that the world changes and shifts, and opinions form as much of reality as fact. When we come back to the question, what is reality? Who is to say? Are we making up the idea of reality? Hours can be spent empirically and scientifically exploring the topic. Even more can be spent philosophically debating it. There are infinite possibilities to this question, and thus infinite realities. And that is the reality of life. So with that, I will leave you. I hope this inspires some thought process, some investigation, some empirical evidence gathering for yourself so that you can determine what is reality for you. And if it's not where you want to be, what is the reality that you would prefer? Once you have that, you can start to map it out. I'll see you guys soon. Have a wonderful Monday.